Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us at today's program featuring LA-based artist Isabel Avila, presented as part of the Wignall Museum's Home Edition, a series of curated artist talks, workshops, and discussions featuring artists and cultural workers. My name is Rebecca Trawick. I'm the director and curator of the Wignall Museum. The Wignall Museum is a teaching museum and interdisciplinary art space that introduces Chaffey College students, faculty, staff, and community members to innovative contemporary art objects and ideas. By fostering critical thinking, visual literacy, discourse, and empathy, the museum seeks to enhance the intellectual and cultural life of our community. We want to take a moment to recognize that we are situated on the Rancho Cucamonga campus of Chaffey College, which resides on the traditional and unceded lands of the Tongva people. We offer our recognition and respect to the elders, both past, present, and future.
And hello, my name is Roman Stollenwerk. I'm assistant curator at the Wignall Museum. We are recording all sessions of Home Edition. When possible, recordings are made available on our website. All recordings on our site include captions and audio descriptions as options. Visit us at www.chaffey.edu/Wignall to access our full schedule of programs and available recordings. Visit our website About Us page if you would like to sign up to receive email announcements. You can follow us on social media, including Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Wignall Museum. After today's session, we ask that you complete a brief survey at tinyurl.com/Wignall Spring 21 Visitor Survey. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andy Hadel. I'm the preparator at the museum. Along with Rebecca and Roman, I'll be assisting in today's Zoom session. In a moment, Isabel will present for about a half an hour, with the remaining time being available for Q&A.
Thanks, Roman and Andy. Today, I'm pleased to introduce our guest artist, Isabel Avila. Isabel Avila is a Los Angeles-based artist who primarily uses color film photography to document aspects of cultural history. Isabel is dedicated to exploring local histories of Southern California, focusing on presenting a subjective perspective of the overlap in local, Native, and Chicano culture. Avila's photographs show the history living, working, and actively creating a counter-narrative to mainstream perception. Avila received her MFA in photography at Cal State University Long Beach and her BFA in photography and imaging at Art Center College of Design. Avila's work has been shown at institutions such as the Vincent Price Art Museum, our own Wignall Museum, the University of Dayton, and LACMA's Charles White Gallery. Work from her Native America series joined the collection at the Gene Autry Museum of Western Heritage. Avila has completed a series of 8 portraits of Native Americans for the permanent exhibit Becoming LA at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles. So please join me in welcoming Isabel and give her a warm virtual welcome. Isabel, welcome and take it away.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here and thanks for having me. Okay, this is basically, I'm a photo-based artist working in Tongva territory, also known as Los Angeles. And when I'm making my work, I am exploring pretty much personal identity, family history, history of land, indigenous, political, colonial history, evolution of cultural history and identity, race, and effects of discrimination. And this is sort of my exploration of putting the pieces together of my own family history. So I think things sort of start with my questions to my grandmother, who's now deceased. And these are both pictures of her. And the one in the left is a portrait she took when she was 18, I believe. And she signed it Bretta Martinez. And that's basically, well, let me rewind a little bit. So I would ask my grandmother basically like about family heritage, and a lot of what was passed down was a lot of like Spanish ancestry as to like what part of Spain my family is from and things of that nature, but a lot of the native ancestry was sort of hidden or kept, or something that was kind of like to be ashamed of, and something that wasn't really, that was intentionally not passed down. So it started to like get me more interested in knowing about that aspect of my ancestry. So, and if I can bring attention to that, her signature again on this photograph, her name is Dolores, but she signed it Preta. And that's sort of like a derogatory term that is used to describe like darker skinned girls, or so. And I really, by looking at the signature, and it looks like she like wrote over it, like maybe she wrote Dolores on it and then wrote over it, you know, Preta. And it just, it made me, it was sort of loaded that like, you know, this term that was given to her was something that she probably didn't really want. And this sort of like active awareness of, you know, your skin color and sort of like a caste system. So, and then the picture on the right is also of her that I took much later in undergrad, but I just threw it in there as a sort of contrast of like, you know, what it would be like photographing her in a sort of like a classical sort of setting, which was something that I thought it would be interesting to sort of do. So it's that, and these pictures will come in later, which I'll show you in a bit. The image on the left is of my great-grandfather. This is my grandmother's father, who was, you know, like of native descent. And her mother was very Spanish, so like light-skinned, blue-eyed, fair-haired and everything. And she ended up marrying this man that she met working on the railroads. They were working on the railroads out here in California. And basically, my grandmother's mother was widowed. They were like Spanish ranchers, and the husband got murdered for like the ranch. And so she was widowed with quite a few children. So she married this man that I guess you can say was sort of like below her caste or whatever. And she had more children with him. And the product of that second marriage was my grandmother. And so thinking about this like environment that my grandmother grew up in, that was a family environment that actually there was internalized prejudice in that family. And so there's a lot of these issues, I think, that exist in Latino culture that people don't deal with or haven't dealt with. And then the image on the right is another family image. It's my aunt, but I'm using this as an example as all of our family members have gone through this Catholic religious sort of ceremony of Catholicism, of First Communion. And it's a reflection of the church's role in society as contributing to some erasure, some level of erasure, which I'll get to later. But so in this photograph, I took, I got that old photograph of my grandmother that I showed you guys, and I stretched it out. And I've always been a fan of that classic painting, the Holbein painting, The Ambassadors, which has the skull that's stretched out, the anamorphic skull. And I love that painting. But so I got that photograph of my grandmother and I stretched it out in this way where it obscures her identity, obscures like who she is, and it sort of embodies the feeling of me trying to sort of like explore or know some aspects to this family history. But just like the Holbein painting, this anamorphic space here can be viewed. It can be viewed from an angle, and then you can actually see the distortion will it will shrink in space, and you can actually see the image if you see it from like an angle, a certain angle. And so then I used a couple of these other images that I just showed you in another. This was sort of like an exploration. I was sort of exploring and just thinking about family issues and history and past, and how these things, they carry a lot of weight, and they carry a lot of weight on the individual as product of these things, and how there's like historical trauma and family trauma, things that get passed down. And just thinking about, ways, how do people deal with these things, or how do you navigate through these issues that are very personal and also very like social and broad. So this is sort of like a representation of that. So thinking about these like issues of internalized family racism and social class structures and castes and things. And thinking about the time also that like my ancestors or people living in this area at the time, like what they experienced as like new waves of influence, political, social, cultural influences started to come into the Los Angeles area, and thinking about like the history, like the current living history, and sort of where these things come from. So I started to look at Junipero Serra, who was the man, he was the friar, who was basically, he was an agent of the Spanish Inquisition that basically came out to, he came out to America to develop the mission system. And he developed the mission system, and he's so ingrained in the history of California that it's impossible to like, he's just everywhere. Like he's there's so many different things are named after him. And I basically took some photographs of buildings and schools and libraries and streets and different things that are named after him. There's memorials, essentially. So this is a little bit of that. Okay. So this is another, this is just a close-up of the Junipero Serra building. So you can kind of see that the name right there. And then these are books that I checked out from the Junipero Serra library on Junipero Serra. And that was really interesting because they had a lot of they had a lot of children's books that were there, teaching children who he is and what he stood for and how important he is to California history, and sort of failed to kind of give a bigger picture of the complexity of the situation, because this history is very complex and his role is very controversial, and basically how the Native community is greatly impacted in a negative way based on what he did, though there's a lot of conflict of ideas where it's compared to other situations, maybe on the East Coast, where Natives didn't have any rights. At least he gave some rights and didn't kill everybody, or but he openly was for torturous punishment and basically enslavement of Native people, but that was still a notch above treatment of them elsewhere. So putting the pieces together of history and treatment of brown people, I guess you could say. Okay, and this is an image of one of those California mission projects, those school mission projects that every like fourth grader was supposed to make. I remember making one. And I took this picture up the street from me, and it was just a discarded piece. And I just thought how like kind of symbolic, how symbolic it was in a sense. But I think today, I think that there's a little more awareness and a little more education. I don't really know exactly I think there's some change as to how they're presenting that California history to students these days. But up to like maybe like a year or two ago, I still went to a school and I photographed a lot of these mission projects. And I still have like these other images of these missions. And so, I mean, I find it fascinating, but the mission is used as it was romanticized, and it was used to bring people, the re-envisioning of the mission, how it was romanticized, was used during like the real estate boom and the economic boom in California to bring people to California. So, you know, the missions were dilapidated, and then it got this like makeover as this romantic era so that, you know, investors can come out to California. So it's not exactly, I mean, there's a more to it than that. Anyhow, these are two descendants of the San Gabriel mission. They're both Tongva, these two ladies, Gloria Arianes and Mitzle Aguilera. So, you know, I always see my practice as sort of like digging deeper, like what leads to what, so yeah, these two women are Tongva representatives, very active in the community. And Gloria Ariana's on the left. I met her when I was doing my Vincent Price project, and I was looking for someone that sort of like overlapped Native community and Chicano community, and that was active in both. And she really embodied that. She's very active in both communities. She's an elder in the community now and is doing a lot of work. And so I'll go back to her. She, you know, she took me into her life really, and she calls me daughter, and I, you know, have a very close relationship with her. And we go to a lot of events together. We're pretty close, and it's a good thing. Oh, and I did want to add, I did take these pictures at the CSULB powwow, and I try to photograph there at every powwow, and I have other images as well. Another inspiration is, was the La Raza exhibit at the Gene Autry Museum, and looking at that magazine, that political newspaper that existed out of the Church of the Epiphany, and the kind of work that they were doing. And that exhibit, I don't know if anyone got a chance to see it, but it was a really great exhibit, well, for photo lovers and political movement lovers and stuff. But it was a great exhibit. It had like over 300 photographs and a lot of historical stuff. And what I was looking at were things like how these like interdisciplinary, or no, cross-cultural struggles, sort of like how the Chicano community was basically supporting Wounded Knee, and also a lot of the Black Panther situation. So there's a lot of intersectionality that was happening back then. And here on the cover of La Raza magazine is Russell Means and the issue of Wounded Knee that was happening in the early 70s. And they were showing their support of that struggle. I guess it's a colonial struggle, I guess you can say. So it's all related. And also, yeah, the magazines played a big role in the Chicano movement. So these are images from that exhibit, from the magazine, and the woman with the sunglasses on the top right is Gloria, the woman that I photographed. And there are various pictures of like from different political rallies and such. And then on the top left, and it looks like the bottom left as well, there are brown berets. And I'm really fascinated with just the whole concept of like brown berets, because it does fascinate, because it's like this, it's taken after like a militaristic thing, but yet, yeah, I go into that later. But anyway, the bottom left is you know, Black and brown solidarity. So all these issues that I'm interested in, I was able to see were documented or issues, you know, in the late 60s, early 70s. And I'm just curious how these things sort of evolve. And here's a Rosalia Munoz, and the picture on the left is him, a documentation of him at that exhibit, the La Raza exhibit. And then images of him on the right are images that I took at one of these events. So one of these commemorative events. And basically why I'm showing this is to sort of illustrate that my involvement extends to me seeking out and attending these events and looking for the veteran activists and speaking with them and looking at how things evolved over time and becoming friends with these people. So this is a portrait that I took of Dr. David Sanchez. He's an activist, founding member of the Brown Berets, and really was instrumental in the walkouts. There were a few people that organized and were part of the walkouts. So I wanted to do a portrait of him just and to have that. So I have this one, and this image of him, he's holding a Ruben Salazar plate. And that Ruben Salazar, I don't know if anyone knows, but he was a Mexican-American activist and news reporter. He worked for the LA Times, and he was covering the Chicano moratorium of 1970, I believe, August 29th. And he was shot and killed by a sheriff, LA sheriff deputy. And that was a really controversial thing that happened. A lot of people believed he was targeted because his reporting started to lean a little more to the left, things like that. So, and he was becoming more of a prominent reporter. He was working for more mainstream media, things like that. So a lot of people feel he was targeted. So he was shot and killed at one of these events in like a bar, and it was documented as well. So actually reporters of the La Raza magazine, the editor documented it. So anyhow, this is at the site location of that shooting. And I'm happy to have this image with David holding that plaque, which David, he comes every year to this space to remember what happened there. And he had that plaque and he put it up himself on the back of that wall, you can see, but it never stays there. So I guess it falls up. It was sort of his own thing. I think he's trying to officialize it through the city and all that stuff. So as I was talking about my involvement, so I try to go every year to to the commemorative moratorium events and document a few things or take some portraits of people, sort of show who's been there and what's this sort of like identity of, you know, Chicano identity or Native identity, you know, what does it mean? So this is another portrait that I took of this woman at the moratorium event at Salazar Park, which was named after Ruben Salazar. It used to be called Laguna Park. These are more pictures of veterans of the Chicano movement. Caesar and Cruz Almeida. Cruz was also a significant individual who's participated in the walkouts. There were quite a few different organizers who participated in organizing walkouts, so he was another individual. But these photographs were taken at one of the commemorative events. So I attend the events and then I take my camera and like photograph them there. So it's not like I'm doing this in a studio or anything. It's all like in the space. So so kind of looking in the Chicano community, and then I tend to like to look a little deeper as to like, I guess you can say I identify as a Chicana, but I feel that my Native ancestry is still a blur. It's still like not quite, defined. I kind of have this idea, that, where some of it is from, and, but there's still much to be discovered in that area. And the sort of Chicano title sort of encompasses that you recognize Native ancestry, but it's never like, it's not very specific enough. So I tend to look into Native culture to be a little more specific as when it comes to like traditional values and outlook in life and perspectives of like just understanding the world. Because, Chicano culture is very much involved in like this political sphere, and a lot of current political things really influence identity and things like that. Anyhow, so this image is of Shannon Rivers, and he's of the Tohono O'odham Nation. And this was when I was visiting Arizona, and he was gathering some creosote medicine. It's a great medicine. It looks great for skin issues and other things. And he gave me permission, or he actually mentioned that if I can take some images of him. And so I had full permission to photograph him as he was gathering medicine. But that can also be like a prayerful act. So interestingly enough, that as I was taking these pictures, my camera started to jam, and it was like it was malfunctioning. So then I was with the belief is that, maybe I wasn't supposed to take that picture, or maybe it was like, it was something that was, you're supposed to be there and you're not supposed to photograph. So anyhow, so this image got light leaks and the camera jammed, and I had told him about it, and he was just like, oh, I guess spirit of the medicine was really strong that day. So, and I guess it was, but this is like the power of, I'm leaving it up to your own to decide if that is true or not, but it's something that, happened to me. And I think it happened like maybe like one other time. Anyhow, so yeah, I do call this a spirit intervention because of that incident. And this is a different series, so I'm bringing this a little more back from Arizona, but this is Long Beach. This is Cal State University Long Beach, also known as Pavungna. And for those that don't know, The school, Cal State Long Beach, is situated on a Tongva Hashiman gathering space, a village space, a burial ground, a very important ceremonial space. So I was, I went to grad school there, and I was just thinking, like, do people walking around have any idea, like, where they're walking on and the history of the place that they're walking on? Do they have any insight as to this kind of other world of consciousness that exists on the space? So it made me think of like portals or interventions or things that could kind of shift our consciousness in the space. So none of these images are digitally manipulated. I didn't use Photoshop. These are all images that I took and that I just printed. I blew up quite large and I brought them into the space and I rephotographed them into the space. And I call this one knowing water because there's so much water around. And there's also like on a deeper level, there's like a connectedness. There's a knowledge about water. Like there used to be certain waterways and there used, streams that are now kind of damped up or secluded or whatever. But yeah, just this relationship with water and knowing about it can really help humanity. And then also there's so many water issues. There's the wetlands there are constantly being jeopardized due to oil drilling and building, just like the other wetlands in other areas of California. So it's a constant issue. I call this piece Contemporary Shell Offerings. There's a part on the campus on the west side of campus that's still kind of an open site that people are trying to protect. And basically I took the picture of the shell offerings on that side of campus, and then I printed it and then brought it into the other side of campus and placed it into the theater building, and I rephotographed it. And I was kind of surprised how real it looks. Like it doesn't look like a photograph, actually looks like there's like, it's cut into the ground. So I was surprised about that. And the reason why I call it contemporary shell offerings, because it's not like, there's other areas where there's shell middens, where there's like ancient shell midden heaps and it's embedded into the ground. It's like hundreds of years old. But this one is, these are contemporary shell offerings that were placed more recently, which shows that the space is constantly being used and is continually being used as a ceremonial gathering space. And this was, I found this article and basically printed it out and set it ablaze myself. Yeah, constant battles. I mean, there's a lot of issues. It gets very complex, which I won't dive into, but you can actually read some aspects of the article if you blow it up large enough. And the print that I display, you can read some of it. But it talks a little bit about the space. But I just think that it's ironic that this man is getting some notoriety for uncovering something that was there and wasn't really meant to be uncovered and things like that. So, and it talks a little bit about the space and how important it was to the people that were there. Thinking of future ceremonies. So this is the area that the image within the image is like the area that I was mentioning on the west side of campus. That is an active ceremonial site. And yeah, so I took this picture and brought it in. And I think there's some issues with the school dumping soil on the land currently, and it not being removed, and just, you know, disrespecting the space. But the trees are beautiful, and I just was thinking, when I think of that space, it's like I want it to be preserved forever. But the facts are that it, you know, it may not, or it's going to be a constant battle for community to have it be preserved forever. But so access to land is so important, as we all know, and it's especially important for, let's say, Native community. And yeah, so thinking about the future is connected directly to land, I guess, thinking about land. And in this image, ways of learning, I brought another image from that area outside on the west side of the campus that I took. I brought it into the library, and it sort of signifies, like, you know, two ways of knowing, or there are multiple ways of learning, of knowing things, and how we gather information. And, you know, are we gathering information from books, which is a great thing, and then there's also gathering information from, like, experience, and, like, you know, and learning directly from another person, or through going through particular things in the being present, and how sometimes the things that we learn when we're present and we firsthand experiences are the things that, like, stay with us, like, very deeply. Yeah, so, but also things of, this also represents, like, value systems too, because sometimes certain ways of learning and knowing may be, like, valued more, or legitimized more, things like that. And this image is called Desecration at the Site of Creation. And this is another image that they took on. I didn't take this image, actually. The middle image, I got it from, I consulted with a historian that works with that space, Wignall, and she lent me material, and I looked through it, and then I liked this image that she had, and I used that one, and I printed it. And it's basically, this rock has major significance, and it's on that site, and it is the origin stories, the stories of creation basically come from that area where the rock is on Cal State Long Beach. And it's not just for, like, it's for all, like, the Tongva, like, comes from that space. And so there's a woman that lives next to that area, and she comes and oversees and looks, and she noticed that there was some graffiti that I guess happens every so often to the space. So she documented it, and I asked her if I could use the image, and she said yes. And I printed it, and I brought it into the space and rephotographed it. I think that's all I have right now. Oh yes, and I have a few resources I can share, where, you know, I got a lot of information that other people might, if they're interested in these types of topics. And the Chicano Studies Research Center is a good one at UCLA that has a huge archive, and they basically shared about they put up the La Raza exhibit with the Gene Autry Museum, and then Mapping Indigenous LA is another good resource for Indigenous history in Los Angeles, and with stories directly from individuals, Tongva individuals. And also the Gloria Ariana's collection at Cal State LA Library. It documents a lot of the Chicano movement as well from her personal collection. And the Wignall Wetlands Protectors are an organization that is, you know, organizing to preserve the Wignall site and the surrounding wetlands. I'm open for questions. I hope I made some connections. I hope I didn't go over.
Thank you so much, Isabel. I have to tell you, I really connect strongly to the work that you, I mean, all of it I think is really incredible. But I really connect to that last series that you did, that you shared with us today, that you did at Long Beach. I love how you're photographing photographs in space and, you know, and within architecture. And I love how it contrasts the past and the present. And like you said, sort of conflicting values of, ownership, land, space, ceremony, acquisition of knowledge. So thank you for that. Really, really beautiful. I also really love the series that you did on Junipero Serra, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
And I know this is like a huge, huge issue. So I know we only have limited time, but it certainly made me think of like the canonization of so many colonizers and, you know, people who've done overtly questionable and racist things throughout history. And, you know, within the last year, especially, although over time we've seen a lot of those public sculptures topple or, you know, be removed either, you know, forcibly or through city council meetings or whatever. I just wondered if you had any thoughts to share on, you know, what we see happening with those monuments.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Well, obviously, they're made monuments for a reason, and they do have a power. I think every monument has a power, and I mean, if I was a Black person in the South and I would see, you know, colonial monuments, I mean, it would make me feel quite diminished, I guess you can say. I mean, thinking about like whose histories are celebrated and things like that. So being in California and seeing a lot of statues representing Junipero Serra, and I know that from my perspective, I know that the situation is obviously very complex, but overall, I think there's space for other histories to be shared and told and monumentalized and celebrated and such than these narrow perspectives of history, because they represent the lines of history that we've been told, the narratives, the constructed narrative really of history that we've been told growing up, and that we continue to hear unless we seek out alternative historical facts. Or I mean, that sounds weird. That sounds bad. Unless we seek out other history that really happened, and a lot of it was well documented. So it's not like it doesn't exist, it's just not being taught. So I know it's complex. I can't say I'm missing any of those statues of Junipero Serra that have been toppled down. I think I'm completely okay with it. I mean, we have enough memorializing of him. I mean, there's so many other things that are named after him everywhere. It's embedded everywhere. And I think Stanford is removing some of his labels, some labels named after him. But I think even with a few statues missing, his presence is still very strong in California. So, and this idea of the monument, I think can be re-looked at as well. Like, do you really need monuments?
We have a question in the chat from Peter. Peter asks, how important is beauty in your work, which is striking?
Striking.
Sort of a comment and a question together.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I kind of go in and out of the idea of beauty. I know beauty is important because it's sort of like, first it brings in the viewer, makes the viewer pay attention to your work and interested in your work. So I know that beauty is really important. I know, in some contemporary art, beauty is not as important, and I respect that too. It's more about like the ideas that are being represented. But ultimately, I think that it's a fine balance between the ideas and beauty. So ultimately, I would like to have both the idea of what I'm trying to say, and beauty work together to sort of like bring some interest to individuals.
I love that you shared resources. I appreciate that. Thank you. So in that spirit, are there any artists whose work is really inspiring you and that you would recommend that folks who are interested in your work check out?
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about that. Oh, were you want to like up and coming artists or people that I like? I really like the work of Adam Broomberg and Oliver Chanran, and they are South African photographers. And they have been working a lot in photography, but they documented the climate sort of like after the apartheid. And I think now they're in England and they're really looking at issues in Israel, the Palestinian Israeli issues and stuff. But I find their perspective to be interesting, and I think that, you know, they have a beauty and a message as well. So I like their work a lot. So they're pretty established. So yeah, there's others as well.
I wonder if you could talk about how you build trust in relationships with the communities that you photograph.
Yeah, that's a really big thing for me. Trust. Nothing beats personal relationships, and I think that's the most important thing. I think the relationships that we have are very important. So building relationships, making sure you respect people and what they want, what they desire, things like that. Working with people and how they want to be represented. So that's definitely one way.
On that note, I love that you are shooting, sorry, I shouldn't say shooting, you're documenting folks in the activist community. And I love that you're looking at people, I don't know, you're showing the longevity of their work. I really love that. You know, I think especially like showing the La Raza pictures and then, you know, these folks today and the fact that they're still showing up, they're still fighting, they're still doing this work. I really think that's amazing. So kind of taking this another direction, but you know, we'll have students who will view this in the future and they'll be interested in like, how can I be an artist? It's not, you know, it seems impossible. Like, how do you create a career around making art? And so I wonder if you have any advice that you would share to young artists who are interested in pursuing art, about longevity, about creating a career that has that.
It's not easy. No, I think there has to be a certain fire or level of interest that is going to sustain you in spite of anything else or all obstacles, and in spite of like financial insecurity or whatever. Like there's just some other things that have to propel you forward, and I think most of that is really your love for what you're doing, what you believe in, and if you're working with certain issues, those issues that you want to bring forth, bring some attention to.
How have you found inspiration, if you will, or motivation during the pandemic this past year to continue with your artworks?
Yeah, that's been kind of tough. I think that's been tough for everybody, but especially for photographers, because you have to meet with people, and a lot in the beginning, or a good deal of the pandemic, people didn't want to meet up. And are you vaccinated? I didn't get vaccinated very recently, which I was kind of didn't know if I wanted to do. And so those issues are always coming up. So I kind of looked more inward, and I was doing other things. I think I started learning music with friends a bit, and looking through maybe stuff that I've already have, and reconfiguring my life. But ultimately, I think all these things sort of add to, you know, who we are, add to you as an artist. Like all of life informs your practice, you know, informs who you are, your perspective, things like that. So all these experiences are sort of, you know, you can use them on some level. But yes, it was quite tough. it wasn't my most productive time.
Well, I want to be conscious of your time, Isabel, and our attendees. I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing more about your practice. It was really a joy to hear from you today. And I want to thank those of you who attended live today. We appreciate it. Please visit us online and to learn more about future programs. Roman just put our address in the chat. He'll also follow up with a very brief request again to complete a survey. We'd really appreciate a couple minutes of your time. It'll help us in planning for the future. So thanks again, Isabel, and thank you all. Please take good care and we'll see you in the fall.
Okay, thank you.